Breaking news. South Sudan's fragile peace deal is on the brink of collapse. Renowned author and professor Jok Madut Jok speaks exclusively to Radio Tamazuj about the ongoing crisis and the 2028 peace agreement between Salva Kiir and Riek Machar. His warning? The deal is collapsing, and the country faces an uncertain future.
Professor Jok, could you please tell us more about what you see happening in South Sudan?
Well, my view of the situation is that there is likely going to be a return to a civil war because the peace agreement is collapsing. Such that those people in the SPLM-IO are going to have to decide whether to swallow their pride and stay in this situation or go back to the bush and try to fight it out. And that is a very detrimental decision for the country and for themselves as well, right? Because their leader, Vice President Dr. Riek Machar, is essentially under arrest, even though he's not behind bars. His entire command and political leadership is in disarray. Some of them are leaving now, joining their forces in the bush. Some of them are in hiding. The government of SPLM-IG has basically taken all the positions in government that were allocated to other political parties that were partners with them in the RRCs. The governorship of Jonglei is given to SPLM-IG. The governorship of Western Equatoria is still hanging in the air. The political positions within the cabinet are uncertain, with one minister being behind bars and the other one arrested but released. And the security apparatus of the SPLA-IO is also either people have left or are in jail. So that situation doesn't seem to suggest that President Kiir is any more interested in upholding the peace agreement. So I think the decision to be made will be, the ball is essentially in the court of SPLM-IO. So we'll see how they react. But whatever happens, we are looking at two options: either a return to war or a surrender of the peace partners. The middle ground for some of us would be for both sides to try to seek some kind of a conversation, not necessarily negotiation, but to talk it out. Probably would be the way to avert a return to war.
Professor, do you see this as an agreement is dead, or is still there is somehow that can work?
Well, if it continues along the same trajectory it is on now, then it will be dead. Eventually, SPLM in government will usurp all power and exclude the rest. So in that sense, it will no longer be the agreement that is holding peace. It will just be whether the government sees itself, the SPLM-IG sees itself as victorious and doesn't have to share power, or the SPLM-IO and other partners in the agreement decide that they submit or they rebel. So that the life of the peace agreement is hanging in jeopardy at the moment. The thing is, South Sudanese activists and politicians and military people and the opposition parties, they are really an incorrigible lot, if you wish, because for a very long time, so many people, including myself, have always pointed to the fact that the peace agreement may have silenced the guns in terms of the fight between SPLA-IO and SPLA or SSPDF, but it has not produced peace. It does not translate into peace in the lives of everyday people, because people were still dying from communal conflicts, which are linked to the power struggle in Juba. Sometimes we think that these communal conflicts are independent, are remote, and are far away from the power politics in Juba. But in fact, it is that power politics in Juba which translate into these communal conflicts, because some of the political leaders are trying to draw their ethnic background, ethnic bases into conflict as a way to defend their power base.
Mm-hmm.
So the conflicts in the hinterland are increasing and becoming more and more deadly. Now the confrontations are there between the Nuer of Unity State and the Jink of Warab. This is already a situation that is unfolding. We see the contentious relationship between cattle keepers from Jonglei and people of Eastern Equatoria. We see the situation between the Zande and the Balanda in Western Equatoria. The country is surrounded by conflict. So when we talk about peace agreement, we are simply talking about an elite pact between the main political parties, but we are not really talking about peace in the lives of people on a daily basis. And so going forward, ARCIS is simply just hanging by a very thin thread. And the future of the country is in jeopardy, existentially. If you look at the possibility of going back to war, in the context that we are in now, it will simply be result in more deaths from the economy is tanked. The hunger is looming all over the country because of poor harvest last year and because of the market being decimated by the war in Sudan. The people in the northern parts of South Sudan will not have access to any market goods because nothing is coming from Sudan, and it is too far away from the borders of Ethiopia and Kenya and Uganda, where the goods come from. So what is going to happen to the country should it go back to war is a disaster. Meanwhile, the political leaders, the people who say that they are running the country, don't seem to be seeing this. They are just focused on holding on to the office, thinking about what about the fate of the country, the fate of the citizens, and the fate of the unity of the country. The situation in Upper Nile has widened the gap between the Jing and the Nuer. So where is unity going to come from if it is not being pursued actively by those who are holding public office?
Professor, let us look at the external powers coming into South Sudan affairs, like the UPDF that have already been confirmed by the government of South Sudan. What do you have to say about this?
You know, from a legal or constitutional point of view, if we South Sudanese have agreed that the SPLM in government is the legitimate party ruling the country, then we can also say it also has the legitimate power to invite foreign troops by virtue of defense pact that the government of South Sudan may have with foreign countries, with foreign governments. So legally, I think the government has the right to seek intervention or support or defense agreement with other countries. Okay. But on the side of the sovereignty of the country, the image of the country, the sense of pride and respect that we have for our country, majority of South Sudanese would say that the deployment of UPDF in South Sudan is an insult to the country. It's an insult to the country, but it is also deadly for the country. Because UPDF now coming in will simply be seen as a force that has come in on the side of the few who are in government, but not on the side of the majority of the populace who are now against it, especially if they are going to be deployed in this war between the SSPDF and White Army. If they get involved, White Army will have the right to see them as fair game. So if UPDF gets embroiled in a tribal war, then of course it will make it that much more darker future for the country and its unity.
Professor,
and I think it is a bad idea. In final analysis, it is not a good idea at all for government to invite foreign forces.
Professor Jok, what does this mean to the South Sudan People Defense Forces who have not been paid for almost a year, 1.5 years now? What does the constitution or legal say in part of whether these foreign troops are also paid by the government in the country, or they are not paid? What comes in here? Are they normally paid if they are invited? And if they are paid, what does this mean to the South Sudan People Defense Forces that have not been paid for almost 1.5 years?
Well, we are hearing very loud voices from the side of SSPDF saying that these UPDF forces will be paid, whether paid directly, individually, or a lump sum is paid to their government. And as a result, many soldiers are saying that this is unconscionable to have to fail to pay your own army for going to a year and a half, and then when you bring foreign forces, you pay them. Why couldn't you pay that money to your army so that your army becomes more trained, better equipped, capable of defending its constitution and defending its people? Why do you would not have needed foreign forces if you had been taking care of your own army? That is what the soldiers are saying. And many officers I have talked to will say that they are not on board with the coming of UPDF. Only the top command is. Only the president and people around him are the ones who are bringing this, but it is not done in consultation with the local, with SSPDF. Therefore, going forward, I see a situation where the army will be begrudging the UPDF, and they will not be on board with this plan. So that means the national army of South Sudan is feeling slighted, insulted even, perhaps will be neglected ever more, because there is now a foreign force defending the country. What will be the use for the local army in the country? I think on the whole, it doesn't bode well for the image of South Sudan, for the territorial integrity of South Sudan, for the respect that we give our national army, and it doesn't really work very well for unity of this country.
Professor Jok, do you see what are the possible scenarios that might happen according to your analysis now with all this that is going on?
Well, in the immediate, the White Army will be defeated, but it will not eliminate them. It will simply mean that they will entrench themselves in their communities, and they will be fighting to the finish. Meanwhile, the government will be engaging in counterinsurgency, which then will lead to casualties among civilians and destruction of property. I'm afraid some of the government actions will be crimes of atrocity and war crimes, and perhaps even a serious violation of humanitarian international law. So that is the scenario, a pitched battle going on with the government trying to stem out the White Army, and the White Army insisting that they cannot be defeated and cowed, and will go into a prolonged conflict. All I know is that the government should not let itself be drawn into a war with a tribe, because that is a war it cannot win. Because how do you win a war like that? You cannot finish the fighters, and you cannot defeat them, so you will be engaging in a prolonged conflict, essentially with your own citizens. If the SPLM IG sees itself as the legitimate government of that country, it should not allow itself to be drawn into a prolonged conflict with a segment of the population of the country. The White Army also needs to review its situation. such that if it simply is going to amount to atrocities and destruction in their territory, perhaps they might also want to propose a possibility of a negotiation and a peace deal, a peace settlement. I'm seeing so many newer community members abroad and in the country saying we want peace, we don't want war. So maybe such voices should be joined collectively by the rest of South Sudanese. If we are our brothers' keepers, I don't think the Jing and the rest of the communities in South Sudan should be silent while the Nuer are being bombarded. I think it behooves us that we all talk with one voice, that these atrocities in Upper Nile are basically atrocities against all of us. They are not just against the Nuer.
Professor, going forward, what do you foresee happening? Election postponement again, another extension, partial elections, government dissolving. What do you foresee?
Well, I think very soon you might see another kind of reshuffle where the government now has completely usurped power from all the other communities within the country, other political communities like political parties and so rest. So if the government finally decides that it is victorious and it is now the one that is going to create the government, and then you will see a reshuffle where ministers and governors will be switch around, just as you saw with Jonglei and you saw with Upper Nile now. The governor's position in Upper Nile belongs to opposition, but now the government is taking it. So what I am seeing going forward is that if the SPLM finally consolidates power, then it will now be up to them to decide whether there will be elections or not, because nobody can force them to hold elections. Because the pressure will be less. There will be no more pressure on them if the other political parties have been completely kicked out of the government. Then the public will now be cowed and made to fear. There will be no protest. Civil society will go quiet. Therefore, we will all be at the whims of the government led by SPLM IG. And there is no pressure from outside because the whole world is now washed their hands off South Sudan. You saw Vice President Riek Machar appealing to IGAD to help him leave Juba and go to areas controlled by IO. I mean, what powers does IGAD have, and what interest does IGAD have in helping Riek go back to his forces? The Western world, you saw the statement from 6 ambassadors, diplomatic missions in the country, saying that they want to mediate talks, which is completely nonsensical. How can ambassadors mediate between the president and his opponent? If they want mediation, they would have to ask their own presidents back in their countries, because ambassadors cannot mediate between the president and his opponents. So I think election will be the farthest thing on our minds at the moment. What will be immediately of concern is the survival of the country, survival of the people. And the more we are pushed to a mode of survival, the less likely there will be any protest from the public, because everybody will now be focused on how to get from one day to the next, rather than how to bring about political transitions in the country.
What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss our latest news headline.